So, without further, I will just make an opening speech. Before we begin, candidate Ant Lewis has asked me to say a few words on his behalf, which all the other candidates are more than happy for me to do so. As you may be aware, Ant has aphasia, a speech and language disorder caused by a serious stroke 10 years ago. Ant is taking a full part in this senatorial campaign, but his difficulties with language means that the traditional Hustings format of questions without notice is not practical for him to answer tonight. Aphasia is a condition that affects communication, but not ability. He will be responding to questions online on his Facebook page, and he will also be holding a number of surgeries, which are better formats for his particular disability. Ant has asked me to thank you for your understanding. And so, without any further ado, I'd like to call on the first candidate, Constable Steve Pallet, to start us off this evening. Thank you.
Good evening, fellow connoisseurs and parishioners. My name is Steve Pallet, and I'm the current Constable of St Brillards. I'm standing for Senator because I believe I have the energy, leadership and experience to play an active role in the island's next government. I've raised many issues recently, but tonight I will focus on affordable housing and making Jersey more active. I'm proud to have married a St John's girl, and Anne's parents, as many of you know, farmed nearby. When we married, housing was both affordable and available, but now we have a shortage of affordable first-time buyer housing for our young people. It cannot be right that the opportunities afforded to us are not afforded to young families now. We've already failed at least one generation. We cannot fail another. Resolving this issue is a priority, because if we don't offer our younger generation quality affordable housing, then we are not going to encourage them to return to Jersey and make Jersey their home. We need to make Jersey attractive to more of our young people if we are going to address our skills gap and reduce our reliance on the current levels of unsustainable inward migration. If elected, I want to work with the parishes to identify sites around the island for the construction of a further 500 affordable homes. Capped at £300,000 for a 3-bed home, these properties would remain in the first-time buyer category in perpetuity. I'm aware that your Constable and Working Party are looking to build affordable homes in St John's, but other parishes are going to have to play their part as well. We need committed, forward-thinking people who are prepared to work together to deliver affordable houses, and not candidates who would prefer to throw stones in glass houses. It is important, though, that any plans for new development is in keeping with our island, and that sufficient quality open space is provided within any development to improve islanders' physical and mental well-being. In 2017, I established Jersey Sport as the independent voice for sport in the island, and, working with them, I wish to lead on a new strategy called Active Jersey. As part of that strategy, I want to champion the daily mile in all schools as a way of improving both the physical and mental well-being of all children, whilst inspiring children to be more confident and ready to learn. Active Jersey will also work to reduce and prevent illness and obesity. Whilst our ageing population should be celebrated, we need to ensure that cases of chronic illness, such as heart disease and diabetes, are reduced if our health service is going to have a sustainable future and the burden on you, the taxpayer, is to be reduced. Active Jersey can and will lead the way on this. Ladies and gentlemen, if we work together, we can have an active future and address the issues of affordable housing. I have the energy, leadership and experience qualities to get the ball rolling. Please consider me for one of your votes on the 16th of May. Thank you very much.
And number 2 to speak is Tracy Valois.
Good evening, Connotab, ladies and gentlemen. It has been an absolute privilege and honour to serve the parishioners of St John over the last 3.5 years, and I wish the candidates for deputy every success with their campaign, and whoever succeeds, please look after our wonderful parish over the next 4 years. Although I am saddened to leave such a role, having worked so well with the constable and for the parish, I feel it's time to seek an island-wide mandate. When the world is changing at such a rapid pace, it concerns me that we are unable to embrace change and be leaders in areas such as education and health. We fail to recognise what education really encompasses. No one identifies with the ideals of a curriculum or government policy, but they do remember the enthusiasm and inspiration of teachers. I would like to place faith and trust back into the teaching profession and not dictate to them what should or should not be the norm for our future generations. Invest in a comprehensive further education campus that supports not just students leaving education, but those who wish to reskill and change career or life opportunities. The ability to provide public services will continue to be under strain without addressing the role of immigration and the population. I support work permits, and although I recognise the uncertainty that outside influences have on our economy, there are real concerns as to how we can afford or even support the demand the island is currently facing. A full and comprehensive review of the workings within the income support system are imperative and need to be considered against the role of personal taxation and the many anomalies which currently reside within the system and cause many issues with people trying to achieve real financial independence. Valuing care is a serious and important area for whoever is successful in this election. Illness does not work to a timetable, respite is few and far between, and much of the care provided is from charities. I feel we need to be seriously concerned about the demands that our health service face and will continue to face in the coming years. Not only is it an ageing demographic, there are many working adults living with conditions that because we do not see it, we believe it does not exist. There is a need to support the vital services of both health and third sector services, but also to recognise the need to address the viability of the health insurance fund and consider its objectives to meet a primary care model that assists in prevention, diagnosis and support. I am tenacious, hard-working and a team player, but also I recognise the importance of being accountable to the electorate in delivering their expectations. The role of a states member is not easy, but I am a person of integrity and willing to rise to challenges we all face. Please consider me for one of your votes on the 16th of May. Thank you.
Number 3 is Gino Rizzoli.
Good evening, St John. My name is Gino Rizzoli. I'm a local businessman, lived in St Helier for the last 30 years. I have 2 sons studying at the universities of Bristol and Reading. My personal interest is human behaviour. I studied politics, religions, cultures and sciences just so I can understand human behaviour. Presently, we're going through great changes and we're not ready. The internet is driving new ideas thousands of times faster than our past. Governments all around the world are struggling to come to terms with the speed of that change, and Jersey is no exception. That is why many of our politicians have stood down. Today, old-style politics is dead. The sooner we grasp this, the better. There is no room for conflict politics, no room for party politics, left or right, trying to make the unacceptable acceptable. That's finished. We simply require policies that is perceived by society to be fair. Currently, we do not have leadership, just defence mechanisms grappling with one failure after another. When a minority win a policy that is seen to be unfair by society, you've won nothing, no free lunch. Every unfair policy will bring you heartache. It will confuse your children and risk their future. You invite more crime and social evil on every level. Yet fair policies will do the exact opposite. The rewards for fair policy is immediate cohesion of society, which will repay you many times more than the advantage you may think you have gained by an unfair policy. Fair policy immediately gives cohesion in society, which will bring a flood of new ideas and opportunities on growth on every area. Personal growth is a requirement to sustain your life. Jersey will be endowed with such a reputation for happiness and creativity, we will be forced to introduce a permit system to control demand. Tourism will be replenished by the example we set. All this takes a leap of faith. It requires truth. This is why my first job is to deliver financial accountability online. The detail will show you what your government is doing and not what they say they're doing, and will stop the colossal waste. Truth is a requirement for growth in every discipline. You either grow or die. I am the only candidate in Jersey that has the necessary understandings to deliver extraordinary change. Your vote for me will start a new era of happiness and wealth. On this bench is mostly old-style politics. You have a choice. Vote for me, a vote for a new world where you come first and the economy will serve it.
And the next candidate is Gerrard Boda.
Monsieur le Connétable, parishioners of St John, good evening. Thank you for coming. I'm Gerrard Boda. Now, I was going to get a consultant to write my speech tonight, but apparently they're all busy, so I wrote it myself. Some candidates will tell you that ministerial government is just fine. Well, I'm afraid it's not. It's been a disaster. It was purported to save money and produce better decisions. It has done the opposite. 25 million on an invisible hospital, even before plans were agreed. That's enough to build 100 new homes. The Condor contract, the refusal to control population, creating that world shortage of consultants by bringing them all to Jersey. Some are earning over £1,300 a day, or employing another 37 top civil servants. Now, the Chief Minister tells us he wants to continue driving out waste. Well, I believe this is creating waste, not driving it out. And why does everything we do have to be world-class? The only thing world-class about our project is the cost. Instead of phoning a friend, maybe a minister should consider asking the audience. Now, this government is dysfunctional. It's incompetent. It serves itself, not the public. Whereas under the previous committee system, each member sat on several committees. The states worked as a team, and every member's talent was used to the full. Under the present system, ministers work in silos, disconnected from the public, and under the control of the Chief Minister. It is a de facto dictatorship. Now, I could stand here and talk to you about change, how I'm going to rejuvenate tourism, help agriculture, reduce poverty, and a host of other things, but I'm not going to, and you won't find it in my manifesto. Because any candidate who promises those things is misleading you, because unless they become a minister, none of those pledges can be delivered under the present system. Which is why, if elected, I will dedicate myself to changing the system. I have the experience for senatorial office, 40 years of running my own business, 13 years as a states member, where I served on the Telecoms, Housing and Public Services Committee. I later served on the Shadow Scrutiny Panel, the Planning Applications Panel, the Privilege and Procedures Committee, the Public Accounts Committee, the Law Revision Board, and various other working parties. I was also Vice Chair of the Environment Scrutiny Panel. I also served 13 years on the local Youth Club Management Committee. If elected, I promise to drive not only reform of ministerial government, but also address immigration control. We have to reintroduce work permits and a suitable qualification period. And I will seek, if successful in this election, I will seek a ministerial post from which to achieve that. Thank you for listening.
And the next candidate, Deputy Christina Moore.
Good evening, Connétable, ladies and gentlemen. My campaign is about balancing competing priorities, working with others effectively to find a better way and a sustainable future for our island. By focusing on three issues, the economy, environment and the community, I believe we can deliver a positive result for each and every person. We all love our island's beauty. People want to see decisions that maintain our green fields and spaces, that improve the quality of our water, air and soil. But we need to balance the needs of our community. We know that many people struggle to find affordable and appropriate housing. The high cost of housing puts pressures on a family's budget, and that can lead to financial hardship. Taking on extra work to boost income can have an impact on a person's health and family life. I'll take action on the cost of living to give every family a better start. This begins with affordable homes. Now, here in St John, you were the first parish to create a proper parish plan, and I applaud you for that. I think every parish should have a plan like yours. Parishes are the backbone of our community, and each one should be able to shape its own identity and the needs of its parishioners. Today, we have an economy that performs well and is competitive, and I want to see it strengthen into the future. The other two priorities will fail unless we raise the money to provide healthcare, education, and help to those in need. Boosting productivity is essential to achieve this and to manage population growth. In this digital age, there will be challenges to the way we work, but there are also solutions. As Minister for Home Affairs, I've supported investment in this area. This is an example of how my three-pillar plan will work. Safety is a priority within our community, and I want to maintain low crime figures. Our police officers now have mobile data devices so that they can record incidents, do their admin efficiently, and this means they will spend more time in the community, exactly where they should be. We must also ensure that we encourage every islander to skill up and respond to the challenges of this rapidly changing world, the needs of local businesses, which is why I support a Digital Skills Academy. Now, our traditional industries of agriculture, fishing and tourism are an important part of our island identity. We can also encourage greater diversity by developing a platform for our arts and creative industries to grow. British brands are admired throughout the world and generate billions of pounds in revenue. Jersey has inspired artists for centuries. Let's play to our natural strengths and seek out these opportunities. Experience has taught me that islanders want to see brave and clear leadership from experienced and compassionate leaders who will take action after listening. A vote for more is a vote for a positive voice. I want more for Jersey, and I hope that you do too.
And our next candidate, number 6, Mr. Frank Luce.
Good evening, St John. My name is Frank Luce. Thank you for attending this hustings tonight, and thank you for ensuring that your name be on the electoral roll, enabling you to vote. Your vote and how you vote has never been so important. We are facing a landmark election. You are going to shape the future of the next government for all islanders. You, the minority, are going to carry the apathetic majority into better government by your choice of candidates before you tonight. Never before has the gap between the government and the electorate been greater. Islanders are so appalled by the antics of the present sitting states members that they have turned their back on politics and have lost total faith and feel angry that their opinions are completely ignored by elected members once they get into government. Frankly, reading letters to the editor in the Jersey Evening Post should be made compulsory reading for all states members. The appalling successive low voting turnout since the war is testimony to the contempt islanders have for standing government. The situation can only be reversed by better government made up of members who first and foremost listen to the people and shape their policies to make government inclusive to the electorate. Then and only then will the general public feel included, in touch, and this will result in a greater desire to vote. In the meantime, and for this most important election, your vote will speak for all islanders. Potential voters see the system of government in Jersey as bad. They want nothing to do with it. That was an opinion held by me. However, the present Assembly have horrified me to such an extent that I am now before you asking for your vote, so that I may represent the thoughts, feelings and opinions of islanders in the chamber itself. I want to have a strong and significant input in two long outstanding issues: the disgraceful hospital saga and the independent inquiry into the lifeboat power and personality struggle that present government does not wish to happen. To face in the new Assembly the looming priorities of Brexit and population control, and ensure that agriculture and tourism are better supported to form a holy trinity of business sectors along with the finance industry. I want to work for a listening state chamber that puts islanders first, and for that I need your confidence, support and vote. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak to you, and I hope to meet you and be of service to you for the next momentous 4 years. For your ballot paper, the name is Luce, Frank Luce. Thank you very much indeed. Good evening.
And I now call on Deputy Sam Mezac.
Monsieur le Connétable, friends, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here this evening. My name is Sam Mezac and I've been the Deputy for St Helier No. 2 District for the last 4 years now. I hope that I've shown in my time as a States member that I am a hard-working member who never shies away from asking tough questions and proposing alternatives when I don't think the government has got it right. I fought from the backbenchers to improve the lot of low and middle earners. I've opposed every single government attempt to reduce our public services and introduce stealth taxes, and I've successfully fought to implement my previous manifesto commitments on things like the living wage, equal marriage, and a crackdown on exploitative zero-hours contracts. I'm standing for Senator now because I want to play a positive and constructive role in the next government of Jersey to force to the top of the agenda for the next States Assembly the aim of improving the standard of living for all islanders. I don't want to shout from the sidelines. I want to be at the forefront of delivering positive change for the island. And this election on the 16th of May is your opportunity to vote for change in the way that we do politics in Jersey. Opinion poll after opinion poll shows us that the public are not happy with how the States works. We have the lowest voter turnouts in Europe. Most of the people I speak to feel like the last few years of Jersey politics have been characterised by dysfunctional government, a lot of wasteful spending and an over-reliance on UK consultants because nobody in the States is ever held to account for their decisions. But these are issues which feel like they come up election after election and nothing ever really seems to change unless things actually get worse. Many of you will have felt that life has got more difficult over the last 4 years with the cost of housing going up, wages stagnating and strains on our public services. But worst of all, we've all heard the terrible stories about the increase in poverty in Jersey. These are trends which simply can't carry on forever. The next government must do something to reverse this and set the island in the right direction. I'm standing for election alongside 17 other candidates on a joint manifesto, 33 pages long, with 10 key pledges which we know are deliverable and which will have a tangible impact on improving life for many islanders. We're not interested in personality politics. We only want to debate the issues and put forward what we hope you'll consider to be sensible solutions to the challenges that Jersey faces. And you might not like everything in our manifesto, but I hope that voters will see that there is a better way of doing politics, a way which is much more capable of meeting the aspirations of the people of Jersey and delivering a better government system for all of us, no matter what our political views are. If you want change, I hope you'll vote for me on the 16th of May, and I promise you that I will work tirelessly to do anything I can to make this a fairer island which works for all of us. Thank you very much.
And I call upon Stevie Ocean.
Merci, Monsieur Connétable. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's nice to be back here. I stood before you, well, I sat before you 2 years ago, and I made some promises to you. Well, they weren't exactly promises, they were objectives. First of all, it was to have the Letters UK removed from Google. Now, after a 2-day argument with the Americans, I achieved that. And that wasn't easy. These people in America are now starting to be educated and recognise that we are nothing to do with the UK whatsoever. And I'm also in the process of doing this with LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. All three of them, I'm on their backs, and they won't get away with it. Now, what else have I achieved? Well, I achieved history, because back in 2016, there was confusion on the ballot paper. Nobody knows me under my birth name, and it cost me votes. There was sport votes. It was ridiculous. And unfortunately, because of that, I was determined this time round to make sure this didn't happen again, not just for my benefit, but for yours as well with voting. The whole of that paper has been changed because I have changed the law. Now, I'm the first person ever in the history of this island to change the law outside the States Assembly. That is a fact. What actually happened was a member of government actually represented me and went in front of the law officer, and for credence I added my equity card to it. And basically he looked at my equity card and said, this man is definitely not Peter Mac, because people were unfortunately putting us in the same category, and that was wrong. I have a £10 million personal liability insurance for equity on my equity card, and Peter Mac hasn't got any such thing. So what else have I done? I actually couldn't put my manifesto inside that booklet. It's 1,000 words. And what I've done, in fact, is 2 points. First of all, grammatically, not everybody can read. So that's the first point. I've actually taken this into account and simplified it so everybody understands it, and that's important. And secondly, I've also put it in capital letters, not to shout out what I'm trying to do, but actually for people who have got eyesight problems. So I've covered those 2 points. 4 of my objectives are, in fact, they need States Assembly approval, but the other 2 I'm actually working on at the moment. So I'm a man of action, and I do get things done. I don't make promises and I don't make pledges. So if you want to vote for somebody who gets things done, vote for Ocean Stevie on May the 16th, or pre-vote at St Paul's Centre now up to the 14th of May. And don't forget to take some ID from 8:30 in the morning till 5:15 in the evening. Thank you very much.
And I now ask Mr. Gordon Troy.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of St John. I'm Gordon George Troy, educated at De La Salle College. I'm from a business and politically motivated family that are passionate about the island that we love. I'd appreciate your vote so I may have the honour and privilege of serving the people of Jersey. If elected, I'm to bring propositions to the House. 1, to introduce a livable pension for senior citizens. 2, make housing available and truly affordable. 3, introduce population control and work permits. 4, peg GST at 5% and remove it from food items. And 5, I want to crush government financial waste. Mr. Gorst's government has failed our pensioners, bringing hardship to many. I want pensions increased to what I call the livable pension, so that pensioners can enjoy retired life. Pensions created our economy and our modern society. We owe them a debt of gratitude, and I intend appointing a commission to look at how we can improve every aspect of pensioners' lives. From pensions to healthcare, from diet and exercise to well-being and community life. And moving on to affordable homes, there's a lot of talk about them, but that's all there is. And if you want affordable homes, you've got to do something. And this is what we have to do as government. 1, government must allocate land for the appropriate large and small house and apartment sites required. No sites, no housing. 2, government must provide a low initial deposit purchase scheme for first-time buyers. 3, government must provide a mortgage payment scheme to fit the buyer's incomes and or appropriate tax breaks. 4, government must offer shared equity schemes. And 5, government must remove user pays planning charges from planning applications. If user pays stays, it must be on planning applications that are approved only. The planning department gets money every time it says no to your new homes, and there's 1 million no opportunities in every planning application. For the next 30 years, we have a difficult population demographic, as many of our working population retire. We must manage our population with a balanced approach to immigration control. Work permits, short and long term, are essential so that we can service our economy and provide staff for our industries. I want accountability for states' project spending. States members have caught a spending virus, and the cure and the medicine make projects 1, necessary, 2, value for money, 3, on time and on budget. The next fiasco, 65 million for airport improvements. Unbelievable, unnecessary. With tens of thousands of bed nights lost, then, build more beds. We don't need a new airport. States members must stop spending. It's just Terrible the way there's unnecessary and irresponsible spending going on. Thank you.
And at number 10 is Deputy John Fondre.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm John Fondre. I've had the privilege of representing St Lawrence as Deputy for the past 12.5 years. But tonight I'm seeking your support to receive an island mandate. Professionally, I'm a chartered accountant, but with proven political experience. This is useful when dealing with expensive states projects, complex legislation, and large sums of expenditure. We need sustainable finances, and I'm not ignoring the many other issues we face as well: education, environment, youth, mental health, population, to name a few. But the money has to work first, and my job, if I'm elected, is partially to keep the costs down so that tax rises are kept to the minimum possible. Over the last 5 years, I've been doing more and more on an international basis, working with both the French-speaking parliamentary side and also representing Jersey on the British-Irish Parliamentary Assembly. As we face external political pressures, including Brexit, it is critical that we promote the island, improving understanding of Jersey's constitutional position and the value of our finance industry to the City of London and the UK. We facilitate around £500 billion of investment and are therefore worth around £5 billion a year to the UK Exchequer. I've been an honorary trustee of Levo Housing Trust for over 20 years, giving me first-hand experience of the difficulties faced in providing social housing on this island. We're presently investing £12 million into redeveloping Troy Court, which represents the heart of why we were formed some 28 years ago. I support the current review of the housing market. I want to see houses and flats that people can treat as a home, and the states to be focusing on first-time buyers. It's got to be about housing that people can live in. As President of Scrutiny and Chairman of the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel, it's been a hard job holding ministers to account over the past 3.5 years. We've issued the first legal summons to get information, changed the law to put witnesses under oath, and looked at things like the finance centre, the hospital, Brexit, and population policy. Government communication has been poor. We shouldn't have to read the small print to understand the reality of what the Council of Ministers is doing. Consultation needs to be genuine and sincere. Jersey is a beautiful island, and I love our rural areas. I value the parish community and the many benefits of the parish system. But if we want to retain all that we believe is good about Jersey, we have to recognise the pressures on us, including housing and population. It's important we have far better controls, with some flexibility for business, but firstly we must have good data on what is happening overall within our population. At this time we need proven political and financial experience, and I hope you'll consider I can provide that. I make decisions based on hard evidence, I look at the long term, I'm prepared to listen, I will work hard to get to a solution, and I hope you'll consider me for one of your 8 votes for Senator. Thank you.
And now, Senator Lyndon Farnham.
Thank you, Conrad. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. In November 2014, I was appointed Minister for Economic Development, Tourism, Sport and Culture, and since then, I have worked on behalf of islanders to provide strong, sustainable growth across all sectors of the economy. Maintaining a strong economy is important, not only because it provides new jobs and career opportunities, but also creates the wealth required to help those in our community who find themselves in need of assistance. It also allows society to develop in a sustainable fashion for the benefit of everyone. I have previously spoken about issues ranging from agriculture to education and affordable housing to our sporting infrastructure. But this evening I would like to talk briefly about our financial services sector. At previous hustings, candidates have been asked their views, and in particular, how we might work to ensure the continued growth and prosperity of this important part of our economy. Firstly, I believe we must continue to promote Jersey as a clear leader in international finance. We must also ensure that Jersey Finance, the body charged with promoting Jersey Finance on the international stage, remains adequately resourced. And in the post-Brexit era, we must explore new international markets, many of which present significant opportunities. I would also like to develop our reputation of being just an offshore finance centre of excellence to being an offshore business centre of excellence, by broadening even further our offering to the outside world. And we are already seeing a number of international businesses and global organisations from different fields placing their head office activity here in Jersey, not least because of our strong legal, financial and banking infrastructure. It would be remiss of me at this stage not to mention the importance of supporting our tourism industry. Tourism provides transport links and hospitality infrastructure that is essential to facilitate not just our finance industry, but for the benefit of all islanders. We must, of course, continue to meet the highest regulatory standards. And I would like to commend Ian Gorst and Sir Philip Baloch for the work they have done recently in the UK, defending our autonomy. And Jersey has been self-governing since 1204. That's 814 years by my reckoning. And I'm just wondering how much longer it will take for the British Parliament to realise that they cannot impose legislation upon us. Ladies and gentlemen, we have many challenges ahead, but we also have strong foundations, and we need to strengthen those foundations. And to do that, we will need to elect capable people, experienced people, people with a good track record in life who are committed to attaining that goal and working for the benefit of all islanders. Thank you very much.
And next is Mr. Phil McGuire.
Good evening. Just like to give you a quick update on the health warning I raised in St. Lawrence. Early initial results were that only 91 people were suffering from this terrible thing called tax addiction. Further reports have shown that, in fact, now it's not just limited to politicians. This whole thing is rife in our general public. One of the symptoms of tax addiction is that you feel that other people should pay more tax than you by selecting taxes that you don't include yourself. For example, we have suggestions from this table of taxes on the rich, or taxes on business, or politicians who don't really care what tax they are because they'll just vote extra money to themselves to more than compensate for their tax losses. Is there an alternative to taxes and tax addiction? Well, yes. Back in 2008 and 2010, I suggested the idea of sovereign wealth funds. And surprisingly, the government listened, adopted one, and has been running one ever since. And from my reckoning, it's been scandalously successful. It's generated £220 million, or an average of £27.5 million a year. That means that £500 for every taxpayer that they haven't had to find out of their own pocket every year. So this proves that it's possible for government to earn money without taxing people. Now, are there other ways? Well, yes, there are several. For example, we could have a smaller sovereign wealth fund that would deal just with helping venture capital for businesses by offering them money for a piece of equity. Because, surprisingly enough, we do have an awful lot more industries over here than just farming and hospitality and tourism. For example, there's online gaming. Now, I'm not talking here about online gambling. I'm talking about online gaming where people play games. For example, Farmville, which generates £600 million a year. Wouldn't it be nice to have a little slice of that? Or how about World of Warcraft, that generates £110 million per month? That'd be nice. Now, are our kids up to this? Yes, they are. They're equally able to do these things and develop them, if only we gave them a chance. A second thing would be a Bank of Jersey. Now, I suggested this to Mr. Cook in an email, and he replied by saying he didn't see why we need one. Well, the answer is simple, because banks make money. How much do these ways have to earn in order to be useful? Well, their first target is to bridge the £100 million gap left by the 0-10 policy, which no tax has been able to do. If they're able to do more than that and generate more, we might even have tax cuts. What a thought.
I now call on Senator Sarah Ferguson.
Good evening, St John, and good evening, Connaught. I'll put you in the proper order. It's said that we must have unlimited immigration to have a sufficiently large working population to support the ageing population. The proposed policy is that immigration should not exceed the average of that since 2001, 700 people a year. At that rate, by 2035, we will require 185 Le Marais blocks and 6 new primary schools, a real Ponzi scheme. Where will we house them? We need more sites in the villages to give youngsters a chance to live in their home parish. The new island plan gives us the chance to identify sites, but we must also develop an amended migration policy with work permits urgently. We need to improve the quality of our water. Farmers have begun to reduce the use of chemicals, and some are conducting experiments to move to regenerative farming. The results are promising. Reduced costs, reduced need for staff, better quality and earlier crops, and better drainage of fields. And don't talk about the problem of the ageing population. That's rubbish. Who looks after children in the holidays? The grandparents. Who does much of the volunteering in the island? The ageing population. Who does much of the caring in the island? The ageing population. That is, when they're not climbing Kilimanjaro, hiking across the Pampas, or trekking across Iceland. It is time we stopped calling them a problem and paid more attention to the way they are treated. Fears have been expressed that there is insufficient experience in the finance industry amongst those standing for senator. Speaking for myself, I have an undergraduate degree in engineering, an MBA in business from Columbia University, New York, extensive business experience, and a career in the finance industry, ending as a senior banking supervisor at the JFSC. And I'm also a director of the Biarritz Hotel. I'm happy to continue putting this experience to work for the island and for change. You will hear many promises during this election. I merely ask you to ask, how much will it cost, and where will that money come from? We need change desperately, but we need prudence in spending. Please give me your vote on the 16th of May.
And the next one, Deputy Simon Bree.
Good evening, Monsieur le Connétable, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Simon Bree. I'm proud to be a Jerseyman and honoured to be a Deputy for St Clement. I'm Chairman of the Economic Affairs Scrutiny Panel, the Future Hospital Review Panel and the Machinery of Government Review Panel, and Vice Chairman of the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel. I've been working hard on your behalf to hold this government to account. There are major issues facing our island, which will have a direct impact on the daily lives of every one of us. Unless we tackle these now, our quality of life and our island will change forever. Brexit is looming with its unknown impact on our economy. The finance industry is vital to our economy and continued prosperity, but we must diversify our economy and support farming, tourism, the digital sector, small business and startups, so as to reduce over-reliance on the finance sector. Population growth, if left uncontrolled and unchecked, will have serious consequences on our quality of life. Work permits, which are seasonal and time limited, are the only real solution. Families looking to buy their first home are finding it impossible. Government must support parishes in delivering small-scale, affordable home developments to give islanders hope for a better future, much sooner these than large-scale developments of concrete and steel. We must reduce the financial burden on middle to low-income families by reducing the cost and size of the public sector. This does not mean reducing services, and simply raising taxes and charges is not the answer. Removal of GST on food and children's clothing would be a step in the right direction. And government must stop wasting your money. £28 million on a new hospital without a spade being put in the ground. £800,000 on an aircraft registry and only one aircraft to show for it. Countless millions spent on UK consultants, with more spend just announced by the new chief executive. Politics in Jersey has become polarised. It is time to regain the middle ground. It is time to have a government that has a social responsibility and is not just some uncaring, soulless corporate entity run by grey-suited accountants whose only concern is balancing the books. It is time to have a government that is committed to protecting and upholding the traditions and customs that make Jersey unique and wonderful. It is time to have a government that listens to all the people, not just big business. It is time for new political leadership. It is time for your voice to be heard. Your vote is your voice, but change will only happen if you vote. And this election offers you a real opportunity for change. Working together, we can make a real positive difference to the lives of every member of our society. I would be honoured to receive your vote. Thank you.
I now call upon Maz Scott.
Monsieur Connétable, ladies and gentlemen, the States Assembly needs fresh hands on deck with real-world experience to steer the Council of Ministers in a better direction. I'm an Oxford graduate and a former tax specialist. I have been a partner and director of a major local law firm and trust company which had over 800 employees. More recently, as a leadership trainer, I have helped organisations change for the better. Working voluntarily as the chairman of the St Brellard's Bay Association, I've learned more about the shortcomings of the island's land policies than most states members. I'm not an established politician who has taken the island's economic strength for granted. The waste of huge sums of public money and the failure to make better government use of this island's limited resources have hurt both taxpayers and those in need. This style of government needs to change now to help create a better future for all islanders. Even Brexit could offer ways of prospering in the right hands. My skills are easily transferable. As a qualified Jersey lawyer, I have studied the island's political constitution and scrutinised its laws. I'm good at solving complex problems. I know how to use teamwork to get results and how to help others to do so. If elected, I will strive to stop the waste of public money by having government work with the private and voluntary sector more efficiently, so that government funds go in the right places, not to pay the directors' fees of another quango formed to pass the buck. I'll work on improving policies to support a diverse economy that uses our resources more efficiently, while better protecting the island's scenic beauty and heritage, while maintaining its special identity. Most importantly, I will deliver a proposition to reform the States Assembly to improve its value for money. This will resolve the dysfunction between the Council of Ministers and scrutiny and improve the oversight of ministers by requiring ministers to use think tanks, including scrutiny representatives and local experts. I'm standing as Senator because I wish to offer my skills, knowledge and experience for the benefit of all islanders. If elected, I will be good value for money. This is all I can deliver in the time allowed to speak. Please look at my online manifesto at www.mos.je to find out how, if elected, I will deliver much, much more to you. Jersey needs to believe in itself again. Your vote offers you an opportunity to help the island move forward in safe hands with fresh energy. Please consider me for just one of your votes as Senator on the 16th of May. The change we all need. Thank you.
And the next candidate is Senator Ian Gorst.
Monsieur le Connétable, ladies and gentlemen, perhaps I could congratulate you, Connétable, on the sunny weather this evening. When I left home, we were in the fog. Perhaps that was just me. I stood, ladies and gentlemen, for elected office to make a difference and to provide hope for the future. This election is very much about change. We have navigated through some of the most difficult economic and social challenges that we have faced. But be in no doubt, over the next 4 years, we face challenges that will set our future course as a community for many years to come. the uncertainty and the opportunity of Brexit, international uncertainty and the uncertainty of the EU. We have also, of course, suffered the effects of the global financial crisis, and as Chief Minister and a father, I understand the effects that that crisis has had on family budgets. Jersey is a great place. We have made significant progress right across the community, but I'm not satisfied. There is more that I want to see achieved. During this election, I've been talking about effective economic leadership, about improving islanders' lives, and about transforming government. And despite the late nights, I've enjoyed having more time to speak to islanders and understanding their concerns. And I know that there is not a minute to lose. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you do elect me, in addition to my manifesto, I make the following commitments. Within 6 weeks, I will create an Affordable Housing Commission. They will report on actions and changes to drive down cost and increase supply by the end of 2018. And I'll also ask them to include a review of the current 90% rent policy. Within 3 months, I will bring forward changes to the competition regulator to drive down the cost of living. And within 6 months, I will bring forward changes to the long-term care scheme to better provide for those with disabilities that require individually tailored support. There is more to do. I will continue to represent Jersey and its economy and way of life on the international stage. I will continue to drive the transformation of government, focusing on the needs of islanders. When we work together, we can achieve change and a better way. I stand for hope for the future so that you don't risk yours. I would appreciate one of your votes on the 16th of May. Thank you very much indeed.
And our final candidate for the evening, Ant Lewis.
And Lewis, you have never seen a candidate like me before. I am different. I have a different campaign and a different voice, but different is what Jersey needs. My stroke has left me disabled, but it has given me courage, determination and new insight. I will represent those who, like me, don't have a voice. Not just the disabled, but everyone who feels that today's politicians don't speak for them. My focus includes the environment, equality, and community. We need to improve the community of Jersey. We need to improve the environment. It will cost money, but it is an investment for my children and your children. There is no clear voice for the environment in the current states. That has to change. Equality. I bring a new perspective, one formed by both success and hardship. I believe mental health provision must be higher up the political agenda. More understanding and reduced stigma. Where we see inequality and stigma in Jersey, it should be fought. We are improving and have more cosmopolitan living. To create a more equal island. The dangers of having an island of haves and have-nots. I believe that the most marginalized and downtrodden members of our society have something to contribute. From the inmate at Lemoy to the homeless man in the parade, we all have insights and abilities to help make Jersey a better place to live. Everyone has skills and talents. Everyone. We need a system that allows those talents to flourish. The first step is to break down our own stigmas. That is a role of education and defining common goals. Our children and their schooling hold the key. It is then identifying those abilities and channeling them where they are most needed. We need more social enterprises to create businesses and programs that build on our social capital. Like my campaign headquarters, the Beresford Street Kitchen. Communities working together makes us all stronger, and it starts at school. We also need greater recognition of support. The voluntary sector. With more effort from the states, we can better coordinate the work that charities do. I will be the first person with aphasia to stand for the states. I appreciate that makes me different. You may ask, How will I be able to represent you? With modern technology, I can. But for more information, please visit my website, www.andlewis.com. I hope that I will be able to represent all islanders, including those who don't always fit in with the norm. You have 8 votes for senator. Please use one of those on someone who will truly represent change. Thank you.
Thank you. We now come to question time, and we have a roving microphone. So we're prepared to take 2 questions, after which the candidates will answer those 2 questions. So if you'd like to put your hands up, and I'd ask for parishioners first. Please state your name clearly first.
Stuart Langhorne. I speak as an immigrant, I suppose, and parishioner. The island, in common with most Western societies, has an ageing population. Its main industries are finance, tourism, and agriculture. You actually have already work permits, which some of the candidates don't seem to be aware of. The state struggles to attract doctors, nurses, teachers, of which I'm one, and other public servants. The island needs immigration for its industries and to care for its elderly. The workers pay for your pensions. So given these facts, is any politician who plays the immigration card in this election guilty of misleading the public and endangering the future of this island?
Could I have a second question? Yes. Please keep your questions short.
Yes, David Prothero. I was heartened by the response of the candidates to the question about the Christian gospel raised by Mr. Averti in St. Saviour's Hustings. I noted that most, if not all, of the candidates were appreciative of the Judeo-Christian tradition in the island and were up to the principle of doing unto others what we would have them do to us. My question is this. In the present international climate, do the candidates think that Jersey states should provide help in the island for peoples of the world who are suffering danger, displacement, or persecution tonight? I'm not sure how that would be funded. I have an idea that I would propose to you, probably privately. But essentially it's this question. We want to be leaders in international affairs. Should we not be leaders in humanitarian aid?
And according to tradition, the first to answer will be number 6 in line, which is Mr. Frank Luce.
Excuse me. Immigration. There has to be immigration, obviously, to the island, but there has to be control as well. You heard what Senator Sarah Ferguson said about how many more tower blocks of accommodation we'd need and how many more schools we'd need, and that is a fact of life. Yes, obviously we do need talented people coming into the island. We do need people to do jobs that other people in the island can't do, but it has to be controlled. As far as I'm concerned, every person working in the island should have a work permit. Everybody should have a work permit. That should be held and controlled by Social Security, and nobody should be able to come to the island unless they have a job to come to. So yes, yeah, we do need immigration, but we need to control it. Of that there is no doubt, otherwise there won't be any green space left in the island. Sir David, when it comes to your conversation, or your question on support, help, sympathy, care for other places other than Jersey, yes, again, it's a matter of balance, isn't it? I mean, we're not a huge island. We haven't got excess money because we keep on spending it on things like hospitals that aren't built and aircraft registries. The money that has been wasted in this island over the last successive governments could have funded some wonderful opportunities outside of the island. We've got to get our books balanced and we've got to get ourselves correct. Yes, we've got to supply, we've got to be seen to be doing things to the outside world. I couldn't agree with you more, but let's look after our people over here first and foremost, and then with the money that we save that's not wasted, we can spend elsewhere. Thank you, sir.
Sam Mezac.
Stuart, let's be clear, the issue of population is the most complex problem that Jersey faces because it's interlinked to literally everything else the government does, whether that's working out the number of places in schools, number of houses to build, energy generation, literally everything. I am not somebody that believes in building walls or bringing up the drawbridge. I say that as somebody with an immigrant background myself that I'm very proud of, but also the fact that it simply doesn't make sense to reject talented people who want to come to the island and serve the community here. But that being said, we need to have at least vaguely safe predictions about what the numbers are going to be in the future so that we can cater for the people here and make sure that everybody has the best life opportunities. So that's why if we're going to have targets, we have to stick to them. And I think, I know it's not fashionable to say this in a public meeting in Jersey, but we should be looking at Guernsey here, who have had some success in their immigration policy, where they don't suffer from some of the problems that we have. Part of that means providing better local training so people can climb up the ladder so that some businesses don't automatically have to go out of the island to get people in for skills. It's about getting a right balance, but we need to do better than what we've done over recent years. David, I think that's a fantastic question, and I think I'm going to give an answer here that may not necessarily be popular in all parts of my regular support base, but the answer is yes. Jersey is one of the richest places in the world. There is no reason why we shouldn't be doing our bit to help the poor and the marginalised around the world. I'm glad that you referred to the Christian gospel in your opening question, because I think that when you look at the teachings of Jesus about doing unto others as you would have them do unto you, he never couched that by saying, but only if they're from the same place as you. You know, we should always be looking to the rest of the world to help those who we can. Jersey has an Overseas Aid Commission which does absolutely fantastic work, and I made it a key issue in our manifesto that we commit to supporting that institution. We will not see it as an easy target for cutting funding like some people would like to. You know, some people say charity begins at home. It's not either or. We can look after the poor and marginalised in Jersey, and we can do our bit internationally. We can do both. We're better than that.
And the next is Stevie Ocean.
Stuart, in answer to your question, we've got to talk about migration and immigration policy joined together to give us some idea of how many work permits that we need. As has already been mentioned by Frank, about nobody comes to this island without a job. There's been too much out in the past, and it's a bit abused as well, and they've actually gone under the net, and basically that is not going to happen anymore. As far as helping increase this across the board, I mean, it's a numbers game, Stuart. And unfortunately, when you said about work permits, there are essential workers here, you know, in the finance industry, and they do 5 years over here, and then they have to go bye-bye. They have to go home. So, I mean, we can do certain things, but this is something that's never been done as far as I know. I mean, when I was chairman of the Jersey Rights Association, this was something that I put before Frank Walker several times when he was Chief Minister. On the point of humanitarian aid, now, what people don't realise is I am an ambassador for UNICEF and the United Nations through my showbiz, and have been for many, many years, and in fact done an awful lot behind the scenes. Now, as Sam mentioned, there is an Overseas Aid Committee which is run by Deputy Caroline Labby, and it does what it can. You've got, again, a numbers game over money. You can't put all our money in one pot because it won't work. But, you know, as far as that is concerned, I think that we can do what we can, and we've got to balance the books as far as locally is concerned as well. Thank you very much.
I'm next in line. I'd love to answer, but I can't. So, Gordon Troy.
Hi, this is
about working population, really. Now, can I actually ask you all around the table, do you think that the working population is growing? Put your hand up if you think so. Is the working population growing or not? Is that a yes? You don't know. Lots of yeses. Well, looking at the 2016 population figures, which I've got from a Freedom of Information request, the population stands at 104,000. Resident pensioners at 18,636. 2016 increase in births over deaths, including the increase in pensioners, which comes to 2,745, means 2016 population increases another 1,500 as well. Calculate out the results, and it's a net loss of 1,245 working population in 2016 alone. That's assuming that pensioners retire. Apply this calculation over the last 5 years previously to back to 2017, and there's been a loss of over 4,717 people potentially dropping out of the employment pool. And this is why our businesses are starved of staff. We've got people self-employed, working themselves to pieces, trying to get staff and having to do the job themselves. And now Jersey will have to deal with this difficult population demographic of people retiring over the next 30 years, where population will peak and then subside rapidly as the last of the two generations related to the baby boom pass on. Thank you.
And next is John Fondre.
Thank you. In relation to population, I have to say I think it's one of the biggest failures we've had is that there's not been any coherent debate on what the island actually wants on a population policy, and that's one of the reasons that Scrutiny puts its high-level report out, just to get some of the numbers out into the public domain. The problem is that council ministers were working on 1,300 people coming in the last 4 years, and we've actually let 4,000 in. That's been a massive issue, and it's creating massive pressures. So you've got to have control. It's very easy to say, and actually the trick we should be aiming for is to have control without damaging the economy. It's that so-called soft landing. I think the key point to that, again, which is something that should have been happening over the last 2, 3, 4 years, is we really need good data to understand the position, to understand who's coming in, what their contribution is to the economy, all those type of things, so then you can start understanding the position, and then you can start making some rational decisions on it. At the moment, we're operating in a little bit of a void. We may well have the data in the systems, but it's not being brought together. And that's my starting point. So that doesn't necessarily answer the question, but I think it is realistic to say you can then build up the controls. But as I said, you've got to have good data. You've got to have flexibility for business, we know that. But equally, as I said, it's all about kind of just dampening things down. You can't slam on the brakes. We've got to see how we can regain better control. That's my overall stance at this stage. In terms of overseas aid and humanitarian aid, we all struggle with the various crises that are going on around the world, and my view is that we give a lot of help through overseas aid, who do an excellent job, no question. That must continue, and I would very much like to see it increase. And I'll stop there because I'm about to run out of time. Thank you.
Lyndon Farnham.
Thank you, Colin. On immigration, I think we need to plan for limited but sustainable immigration. Throughout the centuries of our history, we've relied on people coming into our island and building it as it appears today. But if we do it properly, it will help the community develop and the economy develop. But we have to manage it far more carefully. The population, proposition on population and immigration has been lodged for debate later this year, and I think the states will want to debate that as soon as possible. But whilst we can control immigration now in any way, shape or form with our licences situation, there are complications over Brexit and what happens after Brexit and whether we bring people from the EU or outside of the EU. And as I said, we need to ensure that businesses can get the staff they need, but without it having, such a significant long-term impact on our population. And there remains the challenge. So yes, I support very limited immigration, targeted and sometimes time limited. In relation, of course, Jersey, I'm sure we have a very good reputation for international assistance, and nobody here would turn anybody away, I'm sure, that are in need. But there is a difference between economic migrants and genuine refugees, and I think Europe have seen a flood of economic migrants, people leaving their countries to seek a better life, and you can't blame them. I don't think Jersey's geared up to accept them. Europe and Great Britain have much bigger infrastructures to deal with it. We will do our bit, but I think the best way we can help these people is by injecting support and finance and international aid and development into their own countries. Thank you.
Phil McGuire.
At the risk of being unpopular, I'm going to take issue with you on your point, Mr. Langdon. I would argue that the problems we're facing have nothing to do with immigration, because we have an open immigration policy at the moment and we're having trouble attracting nurses, doctors and teachers. There's something systemically wrong with the system where these people do not want to come here and offer us their expertise. This has nothing to do with immigration. And we just can't keep adding to the island. We're only 9 miles by 5. We're not infinite. You just can't keep adding on. People are talking about 125,000 people living here in the future. Where are they going to live? Let's get this organized, get this sorted. Yes, by all means, let's fix the problem we have with getting qualified and quality people over here to offer us their expertise. We definitely need them and we can definitely use them. But it's got nothing to do with immigration, really. The second point is on humanitarian aid. I think it's quite obvious that the people of Jersey are monstrously generous. I mean, we have what 1/3 of our charities are based consistently on offering help outside of our island, and that's great. I think personally you cannot have a humanitarian government here if it does not care about the state of all human beings everywhere. And I think that's actually where we can set ourselves as a role model. By looking after our own, we can show how we can look after others as well, and also provide funds for doing that.
Sarah Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Yes, as far as the ageing population and so on is concerned, obviously it's something I feel very strongly about as the chairman of Age Concern. You know, the problem with housing is that demand is so much greater than supply. We built, in the last 4 years, we built 1,261 houses, and at the same time we had immigration of 4,200 people. It's no wonder we've got problems. And getting the information to enable us to analyse the problem properly. When I got re-elected, I brought an amendment to the medium-term finance plan which actually asked for the information we need. And my fellow members, for good or for evil, turned it down. In actual fact, the tax department started doing the work fairly shortly after, but it's coming very slowly, and we need the information desperately. You know, we've got to be flexible with our work permits. I mean, I'm a director of a hotel, as I've said, and we know what it's like to have to hire people and get hold of staff. The cost of living, the cost of housing, you know, it's the same for all of us. Guernsey have kept their population around about 63,000 for the last 5 years. So we just need time to start getting the housing side sorted out. You know, we have children sleeping on mattresses and being kept off school with rat bites, and that is true. I know which school. We need to be able to sort housing out so we can do that. As far as the refugees are concerned, I agree that some are economic and some are not.
bell. If you'd like to speak to me afterwards, I'll tell you.
Simon Bree.
Thank you very much. The question of immigration, well, it's all about population growth, really. Population growth feeds into so many areas of our lives. Housing, land usage, education, health and social services, pressure on infrastructure, more and more cars on the roads. So what are we talking about? We're talking about how do we control the growth in our population, because that comes from two areas. Indigenous, if you want to call it that way, people on the island, and people coming to the island. The only way is to introduce true work permits for every member of the working population that has different conditions and terms on it. But it's got to be sector specific. The finance industry needs are very different to tourism needs, that are very different to agriculture's needs. So we've got to be flexible. One size does not fit all in the area of work permits. So if we need more doctors and nurses, then we have to find ways in which we can attach conditions to their work permits which make it easier for them to come and live and work in Jersey. Brexit's looming. We don't know how that's going to affect things. We need to monitor that very, very carefully. Agriculture at the moment are crying out for labour. They are losing their traditional labour forces. So they are looking for labour. We don't know what's going to happen. With regards to humanitarian aid, I can only praise very highly the work of the Jersey Overseas Aid Commission. The work they do is amazing. And it is the best way for this island to show its human side, to help people overseas where we can. It is beholden on us as a society to help people who are less well off than we are anywhere in the world.
Maz Scott.
So, what we were saying about immigration is that the problem with the current policy is that it's letting too many low-paid workers who can't actually pay for their way, as it were, and it's caused quite a pressure on their housing and as a social security system. I actually get emails from pensioners saying, how come I can't afford to actually live on the pension that I'm getting? And somebody comes in, they've only been here for 2 years, they've not made nearly the same amount of contributions as I have, and they're getting so much more. It's a difficult one to answer. And that's why we're looking now at proposals for work permits, which really are just focusing on partly on this, but also the current system has actually hurt agriculture and tourism, who only employ seasonal worker labour. They don't actually have such a problem with work permits. I agree, though, that we've got to be more judicious when it comes to some other areas, our doctors, our nurses, the finance industry. But I think it's time to have a change of culture there. I come from a background, I worked in the finance industry, we couldn't find lawyers, we had to train people, we had to mentor them. And we're actually there are no proposals at the moment that are actually really looking at how well people like the public sector and the other areas of industry are doing this, are getting involved in the training, projecting their needs and saying, how can we get local resources, local people to fill the gap? We have an education gap. Not a skills gap so much, an education gap. We've got to get in there, we've got to sort it out, and hopefully that will help them. We already are playing the Good Samaritan. Our overseas budget is more than our environment budget. So I think we should be proud about what we're doing there, but we do need to look after our own. Thank you.
Ian Gorst.
Thank you. I think you asked really two questions. Will we need to import skilled labour? And you particularly mentioned education and healthcare. And the answer is absolutely we will. But there is more that we can do here. So we've already got a nurse training course in conjunction with Chester University. We need to encourage more and more on that. Much more complex and difficult when it comes to surgeons and GPs, that they have to go off, and we're going to need to import them there. That's why I'm talking during this election about a digital skills academy, about a University of Jersey taking what happens at Highlands and upping its game, even though there's some good work that goes on there. Where we're concerned about, of course, is the long-term detrimental impact of immigration, and that's why we're looking at short-term work permits in some cases, because we think that might mitigate that long-term detrimental impact. Are we prepared for the ageing population? Well, we've got just shy of £2 billion in the pension fund to navigate over the next 5, 10, 15 years. Terry's in the room. He was instrumental in setting up that fund, and he should be praised for it every day, but at the same time, digital technology is going to change the need for bringing in skills as well. David, the honest answer, and if I speak from my heart, it is yes. I explored whether it was possible, and it absolutely wasn't possible because of our links with the UK. And if we did it for one, we would then, in effect, have open borders and anyone could come. So having had that close to us, then we should be looking to lead in other areas of international and humanitarian aid, and I believe that we are. When I went out to Syria to see the work that the Overseas Aid Commission had done there, we saw children whose lives were being transformed by our money. Jersey is working with Comic Relief, 4 million being turned into 8 million around digital inclusion. In Rwanda, the Jersey Cow is going to every poor family's homes, and it's transforming lives. We've got a lot.
And the next is Steve Pallet.
Stuart, I think with the current levels of migration we've got, I think your question around do I feel guilty if I pay the immigration card is no, I don't feel guilty about playing it when we talk about it. You're right though, we do need to have a sufficient workforce. I think there'll always be a level of migration. I think if we're going to support finance digital and especially our health services, I think it's important that we can bring people in to support those services. But as I said in my speech, I think if we're going to reduce the need for that immigration, I think we do need to have a new education service that's fit for purpose. I think it's good, but it could be a lot better. And I think we need to have an education service that's going to suit specific areas of our economy. I'm quite proud of what we do at places like Highlands, but I think we could do more degree courses on Ireland. I think we could do more with Highlands. We could invest more in there to try to make more of the skills of our local people. But I'm going to go back to a point I made in my speech about attracting Jersey students back. If we don't get the housing sector right, it's not going to be attractive enough to them. I know of a lot of young people in their mid-20s who won't come back because they just don't feel that housing's suitable for them. Time-limited work permits I agree with you. We do have work permits, but we have to look at all areas of work permits and see whether we can do more with that. In terms of the other question from David, I'm not a churchgoer, but I've got Christian ideals. I think we should be helping people from all over the world. We've got a proud tradition in overseas aid, and I think we've done our bit there. In terms of accepting refugees, it's very difficult, but I think some of the scenes we saw in Syria were quite heartbreaking. Some of the boat people, could we have done a little bit more in playing our part and maybe taking some refugees? Frankly, I think, yes, we could have, even if it was a small number, just to show that we cared.
Tracy Valois.
Thank you for your questions. It gets a bit difficult after so many people have answered the same questions to try and come up with something new. But in terms of the immigration card, I think we've got a few issues around this. There's many multiples that apply to this immigration issue. And one particularly is the demand and supply area. So we're not actually applying a particular criteria in terms of the demand and the supply and providing that requirement and giving those expectations and clarity around the people who we need in the island and for our services. In terms of, the world is changing in terms of the method of working, and I think there's actually a bigger issue in the way that our services are being provided in the island, and the fact that people actually find it very expensive to live here. Hence the reason we can't actually get the talents and the skills from the areas that we need to actually be leaders in education and health, for example. So I think the work permit side of things is important, but I think we've got to be very careful in terms of what may happen in the UK with the Brexit situation and the fact that we're still tied to the common travel area. And in terms of the gentleman on humanitarian aid, I'm going to refer to the overseas aid, as other members have mentioned. There's about £10 million budget, and they do fantastic work overseas. And actually, they work very well in conjunction with the External Relations Department now. And there is a new global market strategy, and I think it's opening up conversations and enabling a new way of working, where it's not just about providing money or having people here, but providing the assistance, like Senator Gorst mentioned, the cows in Rwanda. And there's further work there that can be done, and I think it's very promising going forward how we can help in those particular situations.
Gino Rizzoli.
I'm always a bit worried when the immigration card is thrown out there, and I always think it's like it's a desperate bid of whichever party throws it to gain public support through devious means. Now, immigration is a problem because housing is a problem. It's very costly. But I want you to take a look, because on this bench here, there are people here that have been in government a long time. You see, you've got to work out where their interests lie. For instance, share transfer, property sold outside of the island, buy to let, pressure, forcing up prices. We got Andium Homes, headed by we know who, right, who build homes to sell. Oh, no, no, no. When you build a home, you give it to the least mobile people in society, your manual workers, your shop workers. They need a home. Start there. Use states housing to force rentals down and force the private market to come down. It's the only big lever that we have. But on this bench, you'll never get that. Now, I'll tell you for why. You've got to understand that accountants and lawyers, we need them in government, but their first master is corporates. That's where they get £1,000 an hour, £500 an hour. It isn't you. No, I'm sorry. And those people, and those people that work for the industry, once they give a supercomputer an identity, right, there'll be a name plaque and a supercomputer, and all these will be sacked. Thank you.
Gerrard Boda.
Thank you. Stuart, I notice you chastise us, those of us who are calling for work permits and immigration controls, saying that we're misleading the electorate because those controls already existed. Well, some of them do, but they're not applied. And another thing I would suggest is the 20-year qualification period. That went down and down and down until it actually doesn't exist. That is why the 90,000 population limit we had has gone out of the window. The idea that workers pay for pensions, yes, they do. But the idea that we need more and more workers all the time to pay for more pensions is an economic nonsense, because the workers that are paying for those pensions will eventually become pensioners. So it is a huge Ponzi scheme. So do you want the island to have 300 or 400,000 people? No. That's why we need those regulations. Now, David, helping the less fortunate. What a small island like Jersey can do is obviously very limited. I mean, I just made a note there, was that countries have been pouring billions into Africa for the last 40 years. What has it achieved? Very little. Nothing much has changed. We need to stop the problem before it starts. Maybe if America stopped starting wars all over the place, there wouldn't be many of these problems. But returning to Jersey, we already give targeted aid, and I believe that overseas aid punches above its weight, and I hope it continues to do so.
No, I must ask that you do not talk when the...
He addressed me by person, and as a former member of states, he knows I would be allowed an address. The reason was...
I won't allow you an address. Please, can you sit down? We require...
If you want to stand to be a candidate, do, but please stop. Thank you.
I would ask members, please, to respect the candidates and allow them to answer their questions. The next person to speak will be Christina Moore.
Thank you. I do understand that the issue of immigration is a very delicate one, but I think it is a perfect example of why we need to consider our decisions through my three pillars: the economy, the community and the environment, because it is all about achieving a balance. At the moment, as things stand, some business people come to me and tell me that they're going to close if they can't get more workers. So we know that we need to achieve a strong economy and maintain it, not just for this current generation, but for future generations also, so that they can enjoy a good retirement. And so we have to keep that in mind. Do people want to see every coffee shop in St Helier closing and having an automated coffee machine instead so that they make their own? That could be an option, but I don't really think that people would want to see that. People have talked about Guernsey and the situation there. Their population is actually declining, and that has a greater economic consequence for them all. So what can I offer? I would like to see a strengthening of the criminal record checks for those who do come here to play a part in our strong economy, and also focus on the skills and the response that we can provide to the digital economy. The workplace is going to change enormously over the next 5 to 10 years, and I want to ensure that Jersey is well placed to respond to those changes and that we have jobs for the future that provide a strong economy for our generation and those to come. David, in response to your question about overseas aid, I do believe that we play our role on the international stage, and we have a strong international presence. It's important that we do that. Our contribution so far as a percentage of GDP is not perhaps as high as it could be, and I would like to see us increase that in the future, because we do have a part to play on the international stage. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now ask for the next two questions, and the first person to answer this time will be Phil McGuire. So can I have two questions, please? The gentleman at the back. No, go that way.
Yeah. My name is David. Several of you have said tonight about education and farming and everything else, okay? Now, I've got a 15-year-old son that's about to do his Trident thing in the next few weeks. Like many parents here, we've had a few issues along the road with the schools, and every time I've gone into the schools here at St John's and where he is now, the teachers seem to go on about the school statistics rather than the problem that my son's had. And I'm sure I'm not the only one that's been down this road in the past. I come from an agricultural background. I now work in a plant hire business here in Jersey. And you're going about skill shortages and things like that. Now, all the farmers here and everybody, and there's a few of them here tonight, were strangled by health and safety and everything. We can't, I mean, I remember as a kid sitting with my father, my grandfather, and learning and watching, and we can't do that now. Even as me, as a plant hire operator, we can't take kids with us. And this is where they learn. They learn at the beginning.
Could we have your question?
Yeah, but this is what I'm on about, Chris, is what can we do to achieve this? I might not put this into words very well, but everybody is strangled at the moment with we can't do anything. My 15-year-old son the other day said, Dad, I might as well stay at school for the week because there was more not allowed to do. He wants to be a civil engineer. There was more not allowed. He couldn't do anything. Because of the health and safety. Now we need to change all that if you want to get people to stay in the island and do something. I hope you've got the gist of what I'm on about, but that's about where it is.
And the next question. Mr. Day. Brief and to the point, please.
No, the only one thing I was going to start with population, but I just want to point out very quickly that my brother took 3 years to get into America. America, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand have all had work permits for many, many years. I'll leave it there. The other one was population. I am certainly, like many, would not like to see the finance industry downsize. But if UK or the European Union create another nuclear action against its clarity, just what is our plan B?
Thank you. So the two questions are the availability of youngsters gaining experience with the hazards of health and safety. And the second question is what happens if there's another downturn or the UK interferes with our finance industry? And the first person to answer this time is Mr. Phil McGuire. Thank you.
Well, it's always nice to have a couple of easy questions when you're first. I'm afraid I'm a big fan of health and safety. When I think back when I first started on a farm at 13 and I was driving a tractor, I wonder how I didn't kill myself and my co-workers because I was so young. So there are sensible guidelines. Yeah, okay, they're getting a little bit out of control because the people running them have to justify their existence, so they get worse and worse with each passing year. When it comes to young children who are underage, which your 15-year-old son is, there should be guidelines. It may seem frustrating, but that's the way we look after our children, by saying, no, there are certain things that are acceptable, certain things are not. Things that we were able to do when we were children are now no longer available. I'm not entirely convinced that that's a bad thing. I know it's frustrating, but we're talking about children and their protection after all, and that surely comes first. As for the second thing, we do have this strange position where we are dependent upon the Privy Council and other parts of the British government, and that makes the assigning government feel that they have rights over us, which technically they don't. But we seem to be having trouble persuading them that really they should keep their damn noses out of our business when it doesn't concern them. It does annoy me when I hear politicians from the mainland spouting off about what Jersey should or shouldn't do, and I think, well, I'm sorry, I didn't vote for you, so why are you talking about this?
Sarah Ferguson.
Right. Yes, education, skills, that sort of thing. In the agricultural side, I would like to see Howard Davis Farm back as a research centre instead of just a hidey hole for civil servants. You know, it was meant, TB meant it to be education and research, and that's what we need, because we need to improve the soil in the island, I understand. The problem, obviously, with children and the skills, while education have been thinking, one of our very super members of the community has been supplying very good computers to all the primary schools within the island, new, up-to-date, fast-moving ones, and also 600 new computers to Highlands. And he must have saved, I don't know how much, at education in money. And, you know, education is still talking about, you know, the skills. And I hope your son does well in civil engineering. if there's anything I can do, give me a shout. You know, and we can't always take all risks away from children. Children will climb trees. If they fall out, they'll be careful next time and they won't fall out. We cannot cosset them to that degree. And we need to change the child employment law just so that they can do paper grounds and so on. And as far as the UK government against us, until we have an international standard for an open public register of beneficial ownership, it is totally unreasonable to expect us to be following that standard. If it, that's fine.
Simon Bree.
Thank you very much. The issue about health and safety on farms, building sites, it is a problem. But the biggest problem is government is not investing in the right education and promoting farming in particular. Farming has been let down by successive governments over the last few decades. People have had to leave farming. They can't afford to make money out of it anymore. The land is not as good as it was. We have a PCN problem that we are not dealing with. To answer your question about your son, I would say that surely, in order to attract young people back into farming, government should be providing an educational facility whereby all the young people who are interested can go there and in safe conditions learn about farming, be taught about farming. It's part of our history, it's part of our custom and our traditions. We should protect that. With regards to the finance industry is vital to our economy, but it's coming constantly under pressure and threat from external sources. It's not just the UK, it's the European Union and further afield. What we have to do, the plan B, that we should put in action now, is to diversify our economy so we're not as reliant on the finance industry. Because eventually we will be forced to have a fully public register of beneficial ownership. And that will impact severely on the finance industry. So diversification, support of other industries is the only way in which we are going to survive the next major threat to our finance industry. But we also have to make sure we protect it and where we can, grow it in a well-regulated environment.
Maz Scott.
I agree with Simon about some of the comments about farming, and in fact I do believe that we need to start rethinking that completely, because we should be looking at farmers, their value as custodians of the land, and I do find the whole policies at the moment a bit too confused in terms of what we're really expecting out of farmers. So, but I felt that your question was more to do with how are we addressing things like training our younger generation to get the proper skills when you have these obstacles such as the health and safety. And I agree with Sarah about the child employment law. I mean, the people who, even in the digital sector, are saying to me, look, you know, and this is a sector we're trying to support, right, who are actually saying to me, oh, you know, this Trident scheme, it's just, you know, you just end up having kids filing. This isn't really what we want. We want them to actually develop skills. So I agree. I would very much like to support and help the States Assembly change things so we stop treating people in general like morons and certainly respect the intelligence of younger adults. That's our finance industry again. I agree with Simon about it would be useful to have more diversification, but we've had quite a few kind of attacks in the past on the finance industry and misunderstandings by people in the UK Parliament. And I find it very frustrating that a lot of the things that are being imposed are in the absence of a level playing field. You can look at the UK and say, well, you don't actually do this yourself. Oh, no, but we want you to do this. And I believe that we do have the ability to negotiate, and we haven't quite yet resorted to saying, well, look, if you don't want to, if you're going to do this, we could have got friends in Russia. We haven't quite done that. But no, I'm saying we've got to learn to actually present our case better. And yes, there are other markets, but I do believe with actual patience and negotiation, we can. Thanks.
Ian Gorst.
Common sense are two words that we don't, we hear a lot about, but we don't see much of it in today's society. I learnt to drive sitting on a tractor seat with my father. I hate to think what age it was and what sort of driver I was back then. And it is a real disappointment to me that legislation which is meant to improve people's lives and protect them is actually now got to the stage where it's having a reverse effect. I know you asked a question about education. I haven't got time to do that bit justice because there are other issues there about focusing just on standards, which is really important, but actually also focusing on individuals and ensuring they make their most through the educational system. I think that from a government perspective, we need to work more with farmers. I hope that the new rural strategy might start some of that in progress. And a thing that nobody is saying in the UK, but we absolutely understand here in Jersey, that Brexit is going to help us look at some of these pieces of legislation and actually ask, are they fit for purpose? Are they delivering the safety when it comes to health and safety? Or are they just tying people up in red tape and then stopping them and stopping businesses? And I think we're going to find that there are some changes we can make there. Plan B, we don't need a plan B. The issue that we faced last week was about constitution. It was a constitutional issue, and I was quite clear with the UK. They did not have the ability to override our constitution. So the secondary policy issue that other people have spoken about registers of beneficial ownership, we've had one for 30 years. Will the standard change? The standard will change. It's already changing. People like FATFA, people like the NGOs. So it is going to change, but we will not be forced to do it if we stand up and talk about our constitutional position, which is different from some of our other sister islands. So we don't need a...
Steve Pallet.
I think, as has already been said, I think in terms of farming, I think government's going to have to put its hand in its pocket, I think, and invest more in farming, certainly try to attract younger people into the industry. It's very difficult, we know that, with the remuneration that's involved around farming, but we need to, and it's also been difficult, I think, with old farms years ago which were handed down to sons and daughters sometimes, but mainly sons. We've lost them to the industry. They're much bigger farms now, and I think it's very difficult to attract people into that. In terms of the things that you're going to with your son, the sort of things that I went through with my son. He came and worked with me when he was 15. He wasn't particularly very academically talented, but he liked working with his hands. And I taught him things now I wouldn't be allowed to do. And I think that's a real shame because he gained experience, which then allowed him to go to Highlands to learn things that then ended up teaching me things about health and safety, some of the things I didn't particularly want to learn. But I think the important thing we've got to remember is that as much as you might not like it, I didn't like it, we've got to keep people safe in the workplace. I think that's really important. But at the end of the day, I think common sense has been said a few times here. There needs to be some common sense where people can take people to the workplace and give them some experience. Trident's a perfect example, but that probably needs to be expanded a little bit more. In terms of the finance industry, we've had some strong leadership recently from our Chief Minister and Sir Philip Ballas to make sure that we came up on the right side of the problems that we had. I think we need to carry on doing that. I think we need to make sure we've got our high levels of regulation so that we can protect the industry. And the states need to be nimble in bringing in new legislation when it has to as well. In terms of new events, I think there's great opportunities for events, tourism in Jersey, both sports. Really sad that we've lost some of our cultural events and some of our music events. Thank you.
Tracy Valois.
Thank you for your questions. In terms of the education side of things, I think there's a lot of bureaucratic nonsense within education these days. I'm really actually concerned about the way that our children are growing up being fed how to pass tests rather than be practical and actually have a creative education. And I think there's a balance that has to be had because every child is individual. Every child has a different way of learning and knowing how to do things. And in terms of how we could introduce the farming element, in terms of vocational skills, there are fantastic examples in Europe, for example in Germany, where they've got colleges that provide vocational areas where we could have this type of joining up with industry at a Highland, or as a Highlands campus where you have the availability of learning skills in farming and hospitality and finance and all these different areas in one place. And you have the opportunity for that cross-fertilisation of skills as well. And that would provide further opportunity for diversifying our economy in the long term. I'm not talking this can be done in 1 4-year term. But there's huge opportunity for us to do things here. And I'm really passionate about it because I've got an 11-year-old son and I hear it day in, day out about how he feels at school and what he is seeing on the ground. And I'm hearing it from many of his friends. And I want to see them coming back from school happy, learning and enjoying being part of the society that they live in and knowing that they have a future in Jersey and beyond. In terms of the question about Plan B, well, in terms of the work between external relations, I think there's going to have to be a continued drive between external relations and Jersey Finance Limited. There are numerous reports that are constantly being pushed out from the UK and the EU about erosion, profit shifting and all those types of things. And we need to keep on the ball. We need to be nimble in terms of how we deal with these and ensure that we can...
Gino Rizzoli.
You hear a lot of excuses on this bench here. There are people on this bench who've been in government many years, and you ask questions about red tape, where have they been? You ask questions about the environment, where have they been? You know, it's the only profession you can have that you can get away with making excuses for not doing your job. Now, it's only because the people on this bench are not good enough. Most of us on this bench is not good enough to do the job because you won't allow, no, that's true, you won't allow accountability to, I talked to you about accountability 15 years, 20 years ago. You could see every move that this government makes through their financial dealings, but you said no. Why? Because you back the devil you know. You don't trust the truth to deliver, you see. Now that's the nub of it, right? So what you have here is a sort of an illusion of a democracy. It isn't a democracy. It's well held to the right. And of course the right produces the left. Well, on this bench, there's a couple of moves that have just been made. Steve Pallet and 42 other ministers here, or candidates, signed a plaque giving Jersey Sport, Jersey Active, £1.3 million of your money. I saw this, they rolled out this thing at the Pomdor Hotel, explaining what they could deliver, and it's all based on data that is completely misrepresented. And yet, 42 ministers went that way, I went that way. Very quick for me to realise where there is, because I've studied it.
Gerrard Boda.
Thank you, Mr. Constable. Health and safety has, in my view, gone too far over the years. It's now possibly counterproductive. The farmers certainly don't need any more restrictions placed on them. They're trying to get a living out of farming is almost impossible already. Yes, health and safety is important, but on the other hand, you don't learn by watching, you only learn by doing. I mean, I know I come from a farming family. After my father died, I ran the farm for just over 15 years. I'll give you an example. I've been spraying crops for nearly 50 years. I'm not allowed to anymore because I'm not qualified. So I've got to get somebody who knows less than I do to qualify me. It's marvellous. Red tape, health and safety, it grows because the civil servants just love creating it. It's their job. But they're not troubled by the downside. Finance, Plan B. Well, we don't have one. The states had a policy, they've had it for decades, to diversify the economy. But I'm afraid the Minister's idea of diversifying the economy is actually to diversify the finance industry. That's madness. Obviously, we're going to have to force them to do the policy, to carry out the policy that they have been entrusted to do and failed to do.
Christina Moore.
Thank you for the questions. David, I believe that children are our future. They have, and I wish them to see, the opportunities to explore their many diverse interests. We need them to maintain a diverse interest so that they can contribute in different ways to the economy of the future. We can do more. We can offer more apprenticeships, and I think many people would like to see a greater practical aspect to education in the future. But there are also existing opportunities available for them today. We have some fantastic opportunities in the cadet forces in the island, and as an engineer, I'm sure that your son might well enjoy joining the Sea Cadets, for example, where they do concentrate and offer an insight into those engineering skills that I hope he will really enjoy in the future. Farming, of course, is a great part of our island and its traditions, and we do want to see it continue to farm. That's why I think we should investigate the opportunity to remove rates on agricultural land as a way of paying back the farmers who have conducted the broncage for these many years, twice a year, to keep the island looking in fantastic shape, which is something quite unique to us. Mr. Day, the finance sector is a strong place. With continuing good diplomacy, I see a good future for finance. But of course, we do have to work on diversifying our economy. We always have to maintain a high level of skill and respond to the challenges that are around us. That's why I've been talking about investing more in digital skills and also looking after our traditional industries. Fishing, particularly, could actually see opportunities with Brexit. And in my speech, I mentioned supporting our arts and creative industries. There is a wealth of opportunity out there if we could support those industries into contributing in a greater way to our economy.
Frank Luce.
I can't really understand why your son, if he's on a Trident scheme, hasn't the opportunity to do the things around the farm that you're talking about. If he hasn't, really, then something should be done about it. Howdavis Farm was, as we were told, was meant to be an experimental centre for agriculture. They could very easily incorporate in that facility the 4 people who are doing Trident Trust to go onto the land, to go onto the fields with staff, because I can't imagine there are many children like your son who are looking to work on the fields these days, but they could go with control. Unfortunately, it's gone too far. In every respect, everything's gone too far. It's very difficult to breathe without somebody complaining about it. When it comes to finance, do we need a plan B? I don't think we do need a plan B. We will always have a financial input into the world. Very, very fortunately, we have been well regulated, and that is our saving grace. Jersey must be one of the most well-regulated financial centres in the world, and it's highly respected throughout the world. We are well regulated, and there will always be a place for finance in Jersey. Yes, it may have dips, but that's where we come back to diversifying where tourism has been forgotten, Fort Regent has been forgotten, agriculture basically is a loss maker. It was very, very sad reading the JEP that the last dairy farmer in St. Wands has got 10 cows. There's one dairy farm in St. Wands with 10 cows, so it shows you the state of the agricultural industry. Thank you very much indeed.
Sam Mezac.
May Day has been and gone, and May Day is something that we don't really pay much attention to in Jersey, but in countries around the world, there are commemorations where they celebrate the advances for workers' rights that have been hard fought for and won. And it wasn't that long ago where workers were more likely to be injured at work or even die than they are today. And I happen to think that we've made progress since then. And I think it is right that the government be able to say to businesses that they can't cut corners if it's going to make workers less safe when they're simply just doing their jobs. Of course, common sense has got to prevail, and we know in many instances it doesn't, but I support workers' rights. I think there is work that can be done with industries. I know it's not necessarily relevant to your question, but I met with people from hospitality recently who think that there is red tape that gets in the way of them offering opportunities to young people. That is something I think needs to be looked at, because it is right that young people have opportunities in these industries. In terms of Plan B, it's already been said that Jersey doesn't need a Plan B, and we don't need one because we're smarter than that. We're more nimble, and our history shows that. Jersey is already decades ahead of many of these other jurisdictions with our register of beneficial ownership. And I think with what's happened recently, we're actually in a fortunate position, because the UK Parliament's decided it's going to pursue the overseas territories, but not the Crown dependencies, because it can't. So that means we're going to be watching the overseas territories fumble about trying to introduce public registers, and we can watch from afar and learn from their mistakes and don't do what they do. And if it becomes the case that a public register does become the international standard, and Jersey, because it's a pioneer of international standards, may well adopt it too, that day will probably be a very boring day, because there isn't going to be much interesting in that public register. If these countries are interested in pursuing dodgy money, they should probably look at their own systems first.
Stevie Ocean.
David, I think this health and safety thing has gone completely mad and out of control. I refer to going back to the 70s and 80s. If you remember, as some others who haven't, with Michael Crawford, he used to do all his own stunts, and he wouldn't be allowed to do it today. In the same respect as many industries are affected, where they're literally tied up as far as that is concerned. And I think it's wrong. I think there should be a situation where people should be allowed to use common sense. I mean, if you want to supervise your son, there should be no problem about you doing it. Okay? Right, on the point of the finance industry, I mean, I have got Plan B. It's quite simple, and nobody's thought about this at all. The Queen wears two hats. I actually published that this morning. She is actually the Queen of Great Britain and Northern Ireland and defending the faith. She's also the Duchy of Normandy. And if the UK want to be funny about this, we can tell them we're going to become independent, and they will be the biggest losers of the whole thing, because they will lose an enormous amount from the finance industry. So I can't really see them. I mean, they like to bully us. This is what happens. This is what happened with Play.com, a company two Jerseymen set up that was it was round the world. And because the greedy UK little companies wanted to take money out of it, it destroyed it. It gave us an unemployment situation of having 247 people out of work, and we didn't have that before. Thank you.
Gordon Troy.
I sympathise with you on this health and safety thing. When I was a kid, I used to run off to my mate's farm, and we'd ride a tractor around dropping bales of hay off to cows and that sort of thing. It was a great way of life for a young kid to enjoy. But you know, I knew since the introduction of the seatbelt, which is government being paternal and protecting us from ourselves, all this stuff has come in, and it's just absolutely over the top. And yes, we want our kids to be safe, and you'd never put your child at risk, but you've got to be able to get on with teaching him what you know as well. And it's just unfortunate, because civil servants are there to protect us from ourselves, because they believe that we need help. And I think it's them that need help. Moving on to your question, we're going to have trouble with Europe. There's people in Europe that don't like our banking industry. Protocol 3 that was set up, which is was our treaty through the UK, negotiated by the UK, and our trade agreement is with Europe via them. When that was organised, it was organised for the farming industry, the tourism industry, tobacco and alcohol duty-free sales. There was no finance industry. Now, it just so happened that Protocol 3 worked very well with developing our finance industry, which wasn't there in '62 when Protocol 3 was negotiated. And now they can quite easily point the finger and say, look, you've never had a treaty for your finance industry anyway. And this is where we could get a huge amount of problems on the Brexit issues and trouble from Europe. The French definitely don't like us. I know, I've been there. Thanks.
John Fondre.
Mr. Day, there will always be pressure on us as an island. Part of the international work I do is part of the British Irish Parliamentary Assembly, and I've presented twice to senior UK politicians relatively recently on our constitutional position. That's part of the job. And in fact, when it was all kicking off a couple of weekends ago, I did use some of those contacts just to gain some information and feed it back into the team, as Senator Gorst is aware. And I have full confidence in the external relations team. Now, looking ahead, yes, things like diversification are important. Digital is going to play a very key part, and obviously our traditional industries we know. Cutting our cloth is going to be very important as well. But I'm not going to write off our key industry of finance just yet. You know, we really do have to promote and the level playing argument. That's the level playing field argument even. And actually I would also suggest the practical implications to basically law-abiding individuals over the loss of privacy, which is actually, if you think in the context of what's been going on in Europe and the US recently with Facebook and the loss of privacy, we've got two contrasting arguments. You can't have it both ways. If you look at our record, we are continually embraced the things like BEPS, the base original profit sharing, and we're early adopters of the Common Reporting Standard. We have a world-class standard in monitoring beneficial ownership, and we just have to redouble our efforts in actually getting that message across. So I'm not writing off finance just yet. In relation to health and safety, it's a shorter answer, I'm afraid. You've had a lot from everybody else. I also have children, 10 and 14. We need to allow them room to grow. We now allow teachers to teach. I think one of the issues is that the interpretation of the rules is actually sometimes different to what the rules actually say, and it's people being overly cautious, and that's something we do have to address. Thank you.
Lyndon Farnham.
Thank you. With health and safety, I think somewhere between where we were and where we are now is the right place to be to save time, because I know we all want to get home. I align myself with John's brief comments on health and safety. With education, we must do more, I think, to teach and encourage vocational skills at a younger age. Our young people, not everybody wants an academic career. Some of our young people are skilled. They know at 12 and 13 what they want to do. And that's when we need to start teaching them the careers. In addition, we must invest in either upgrading Highlands College or consider building a new technology, trades, agricultural college to harness the local talent. So they've got the opportunity, so we can keep them here and we don't have to keep importing skilled staff. The construction industry is absolutely desperate for skills and it's wanting to import them. And if we spent more time on our young people at an earlier age, we could produce some of that much sooner. It is a, yes, I mean, we're far better. We do work as hard as we can to work with the UK and France and other jurisdictions to make sure we are good, responsible neighbours when we're doing business together. The register of ownership, public register ownership issue, is something that we do, and actually with one of the most highly regulated offshore centres in the world. And we don't mind complying, but at the same time as everybody else, there's a lot of people eyeing our business enviously who want to disadvantage us for their own benefit. And we cannot allow that to happen. Of course, I've already said we need to try and diversify to be more of a business centre, but we must continue, as I alluded to in my opening address, to support our financial services sector. And you can rely on me, absolutely, to defend our constitution vigorously if ever called to do so. Thank you and good night.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've gone past 9:30, which was the finishing time for this evening. I would like to thank all the candidates for their answers and for their participation this evening. And finally, I'd like to thank all of you for coming. And to remind you, you can vote from now at St Paul's up until the 14th of May. And don't forget that Wednesday, the 16th of May, is the important voting day. We'll be here in the parish hall waiting to greet you all. Please come along and cast your vote. How you vote, you will suffer the consequences. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.